Hi everyone, I hope you've had a fabulous week. It is a time of uncertainty for us, as some teachers are facing school closures and thinking, how on earth am I going to teach by distance? Other people are just overwhelmed in their classrooms with the enormity of having to support a really large range of learners. We all have students in our class who are struggling to learn to read. And what I want to share with you today is a bit of an insight into how, if you are sitting at home or at school and you're thinking, I don't know what to do here, they're going to figure out, I don't know what I'm doing. I want to do more for these students, but I've tried a bunch of things and I'm not sure. And you're really wanting to do more, then I hope that this video series is going to help you. Today we're going to have a look at all of the things I wish we had known. And when I say we, I mean you and I also mean our whole teaching profession. Because if you're someone who's had your initial teacher education in the last 20 years, or you've been in a classroom in the last 20 years, you've been seriously let down. I'll just let that sit with you. You have been let down. There's some things that you might not realise. Or maybe you sort of think, oh yeah, that makes sense, but I don't know. Maybe you're still uncertain. And I want to share with you some insights today that might help. I was a young mum and I had my third baby and I was at home and sort of going, well, what am I going to do? And I decided that I was going to start a tutoring business, which I did. And if there's any of my former families watching, hello. I still remember you all fondly, and I'm so pleased to see your stories of how well your kids are doing. I primarily worked on reading, although I did maths with kids as well. And when children would come in, I had a few students who were diagnosed with dyslexia, or I had some other issues. But by and large, most of the kids who came to see me actually were what I would call instructional casualties. So they really didn't need to be struggling. But it's not their parents' fault. It's not to blame their teachers. Like you and like me, their teachers' initial teacher education didn't prepare them. So I want to let you know what the things are now that are really going to make a difference and hopefully give you some insight into why things maybe aren't working as you want them to. But maybe as well, you'll find this video to be quite affirming and you'll say, great, I'm on the right track. So I want to share my screen with you now. Excuse me while I do that. And let's have a look. So I've called it, If Only We Had Known. If only we had known that reading isn't natural. I feel like that's the start of a poem. I'm sorry, I don't have one prepared for you. But if only we had known that reading isn't natural. There is no reading centre in the brain. Clearly, our brain is involved in the reading process and there are specific parts of it that make reading happen. But there isn't one anatomical bit that, we can label the reading bit. We used to think that it was the same part of the brain that manages oral language. And while there are absolutely the language centres in the brain that impact on reading, it's not enough to develop oral language and then say, well, reading will come from that. And that's what the whole language movement is really all about, that if we build children's oral language, they'll make a natural connection to reading and that reading will come as naturally as speaking. And it simply doesn't. And I've said here that language development is necessary for literacy. Absolutely, because if you can't say it, you can't read it and you can't write it. And if you can't understand it, you can't comprehend it when you read. But it's not sufficient to enable children to read. If only we had known that reading to kids doesn't teach them to read. If you are the parent of a struggling reader, you will have been asked this question so many times that it makes you want to slap people. Do you read to your children? Yes, I read to my children. And if you're doubting me, go and have a look at a hashtag on Twitter called Show Us Your Books. There is a well-known Australian children's author who claims that if we just read to our children every day, we'll wipe out illiteracy in 2 or 3 generations, whatever it is. Sorry, no, actually not right. If you're a teacher, be really careful how you broach this, because for parents or struggling readers, most of them are doing their darndest. Many of them are parents who read to their kids every day almost since they were born. Reading to children doesn't make them learn to read. Building an enjoyment of reading is not a strategy for reading instruction. It's a strategy for building enjoyment of story and engaging children with books, which is extremely valuable, don't get me wrong. But we're not going to turn children into readers simply by getting them to enjoy reading. The way we turn children into readers is to teach them how to read. And when that process supports the student's development, hopefully they will come to enjoy it. And not all kids are going to love sitting down and reading books. They just won't. But making it fun doesn't equal reading instruction. We actually have to teach them. Giving a struggling reader a BMX or fishing magazine isn't going to make it easier for them to read. Yes, they will be more familiar with the language there, particularly if they're very interested in it. And that will support the comprehension. But it won't make it easier for the child to decode if they don't have the fundamental phonics and text knowledge that they need. If only we had known that they won't just get there and get there by themselves in their own time. How often do we hear this? Waiting to see is waiting to fail. Maybe they're just not ready to learn to read. Maybe if we give them a bit more time. Generally, no. Children who start behind often stay behind because we don't give them the right type of support to give them the fundamental skills. Forget about catching them up. Rarely happens, sorry to tell you. The level of reading that children achieve by year 3 is generally around where they stay. Not because children can't learn to read beyond that. I'm working with a student at the moment who's in year 4 and over the last almost a year has made wonderful progress. It's not about the lack of ability to learn past that time, is that schools generally stop teaching children to decode at the fundamental level and start accommodating the child's lack of reading. If only we had known that sight words aren't actually a thing. Have a look on YouTube for the reading brain and Stanislas Dehaene, and he's a cognitive neuroscience who will just blow your mind with his research. We don't process familiar words as global shapes. A sight vocabulary is the product of great reading. It's not the cause of it. And we get these things confused. So we say if children can recognize words quickly, they'll be fluent readers. That's true. But a sight word program with flashcards is not going to get them there. And I'll just want to backtrack a little bit by saying some children will. Some children have brain physiology that just puts it all together. And that's not many of them, actually. Some children appear to be doing okay till they get to about year 3 or 4. And in the early years, they sort of have this bank of words that works for them. And they get to more complex vocabulary, words that they haven't seen before, that they're not familiar with, and they don't know how to sound them out. In order to create strong sight vocabulary, as in really quick recognition, we have to build orthographic mapping. And that comes about through teaching children the alphabetic code and how to work with it, as well as developing strong advanced phonemic skills. But the phonemic skills won't just develop by themselves. We need to explicitly teach this stuff, have it in our teaching programs, and be really intentional about what we're doing. No sight word programs, because sight words aren't a thing. If only we had known that the multi-cueing methods teach bad habits. We still today have schools who are teaching multi-cueing reading strategies to students, instructing them to leave sounding out to the last thing they do. Even if your school doesn't explicitly teach that, if you are giving children predictable text full of things that they don't know how to read, they're going to fall into those multi-cueing strategies because they can't decode what's on the page. I think I've actually skipped ahead. That might be the next slide. But sounding out, using the phonics knowledge needs to be the exclusive strategy used by beginning readers. As more advanced readers, you and I use lots of different skills and lots of different strategies, but beginning readers need to be building strong foundations in their phonics and how to use that phonics to decode words in front of them. Because skipping words, looking at pictures, and having a think about what makes sense are actually strategies of inefficient readers in those early levels. Decoding is what we need to be teaching. Oh, there we go. Predictable texts don't support struggling readers. Giving children more of the same level 2 PM text or other associated level text is not going to help them. It will teach them more of those multi-cueing strategies. Texts with complex spelling patterns that children haven't learnt yet actually help them develop poor reading. Decodable text might be needed for a considerable amount of time for a struggling reader. And it's not just that decodable text is something for the little kids. It's about what kind of reader are you, how developed are your skills, and how do we support you. So your struggling students may well need decodable text all the way to high school, and that is okay. In the next video, I'm going to look at reading intervention that works. I'm not going to be recommending programs or things. We're going to be looking at characteristics and features that will help you make decisions for the students in your class and in your school. And I want to mention that coming up, starting on the 30th of April, is the Term 2 Teach Along, which is supporting struggling readers. You don't have to be in it alone. There is evidence around what works for children and how you can support them, and I want to share that with you. I hope you have a lovely weekend. Enjoy your time with your family and friends, and I'll see you next time.